Good morning, Mr. Ghosh.
Good morning.
Welcome to the House of Being. It's an honor to have you with us.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure for me.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ghosh. Today we're doing Chinese breakfast for you. I hope, can I,
Thank
you so much.
Thank you very
Enjoy
much.
yourself, sir.
The chief market for the East India Company's opium was China, which meant that a large fleet of ships shuttled constantly between Calcutta and Guangzhou, or Canton as it was known to Europeans.
I thought I was mad to have taken on, a task like this. I mean, it just seems so impossibly ambitious and so impossibly complicated. But there was also a moment when, I felt like I was hurtling forward,
The Hooghly is silted now, but was once one of the world's busiest ports. And Kolkata, or Calcutta as the city was then known, was the capital of Britain's empire in India.
One of the things that I really intended to do in this book is to interrogate the whole idea of freedom, especially the ways in which, a freedom is deployed as a rhetorical device in, creating this war of aggression.
During the years of the Raj, the British launched many wars, large and small, from Calcutta. My new novel, Flood of Fire, is about a war that has disappeared into the furthest recesses of memory in Britain and in India. The First Opium War of 1840 to 42, which was instrumental in shaping the world as we know it today.
It's such a complicated story, and it's there's so many aspects to it, and it's these very complicated lives interacting, and not just that. I mean, there are the other books to think about, and the ways in which they interconnect with each other. The research is really one of the most interesting things about writing these books. I traveled to so many places, I spent time, I saw things I never would have seen. I spent time visiting the museums, etc. in Guangzhou. In Guangdong province, there are many museums and memorials dedicated to the Opium War. So that was very useful, So I spent a lot of time visiting those. I did go to the National Archives here in Delhi, then the Mauritius National Archives. Then in Mauritius, there's also an amazing museum of the Indentured Workers Museum. It's called the Mahatma Gandhi Museum. And they have an amazing collection of, objects and artifacts related to to the arrival of indentured workers in Mauritius. That was very, very helpful for me. I spent a lot of time in the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich in England. There again, there was a lot of material that was very, very helpful for me. There were other aspects to it too, I mean, like when I knew that it was going to be a book about the sea and about the sea in the 19th century, I felt I should learn to sail. So I tried to learn to sail as well, and that was very instructive.
In today's Kolkata, the Chinese community has dwindled to a couple of thousand residents. Yet traces of its past prosperity can still be seen in its temples and meeting places. A few members of this community figure in River of Smoke, the second book in the Ibis trilogy. We meet them again in Flood of Fire.
In the first book in this trilogy, in Sea of Poppies, I was exploring, if you like, the nautical dimension of this language. In the second, I was exploring the pigeons and the trade dimensions. And in this one, I wanted to really explore exactly this, the suggestive power, the erotic power, if you like, of language. And that was what was so extraordinarily sort of pleasurable about writing, these scenes, because you'll see this. I mean, the scenes at once are sort of comical.
Mr. Ghosh, I would like to present Chef Susan. He's from the
Hello.
Chef and Prophet.
Very nice to meet
He's
you.
not very, very good with English, but what we do is we use iTranslate. But he's a fantastic teacher. And he's
Where in Sichuan province?
Kimchi.
Do you make dan noodles?
Yes. Okay, no problem.
no. He's got it. He does make it.
Tantan bien. Tantan noodles.
He would need a little bit of time to make it, but he's ready to make it. So if you told you ready, then I'll tell him to.
No, not today. That's another time.
The Ibis trilogy begins in the opium fields of Bihar and follows the migration of indentured workers to British colonies across the world.
Water is not just a physical presence; it's also an imaginative presence. If you look at the films of Satyajit Ray, for example, in all those scenes in Pothir Pachali, when he's filming, he uses water so suggestively as a metaphor. The disturbances on the surface of the pond. The way in which the non-human aspects of our environment really manifest themselves repeatedly, in the imaginative life and in the culture of Bengal. In Bengal, we have this long tradition of the river novel. We have Advaita Mallaborman's famous book Titash Ekta Nudin Nam, a river called Titash. And that was filmed, turned into a film by Ritik Ghatak. And there really you see the sense in which, water and land are so intimately mixed. So this whole thing of, water and land and their sort of the subtle interplay between the one and the other, it's really, in a way, the landscape speaking to us. It's the presence of the non-human in the life of the human, I was working as a reporter, and this is something I've done throughout my, thank you. This is something I've done throughout my writing career that, I've often done. I started my writing career as a journalist, and I've often written for newspapers and magazines. Writing is, at the end of the day, a very mysterious process, and I say this, as someone who's been immersed in these mysteries for a very long time. It is very mysterious because, often you'll just sit there with that little piece of paper in front of you and nothing comes, And, there are days which are really fallow days, but you have to stick with it, you have to sort of labor on. And then suddenly there'll be a day when you're sitting there in a completely inexplicable way for no particular reason. You'll suddenly just see, the way opening. You'll see window after window after window, just opening in front of you and, receding into the horizon. And really there have been days when I just, that happens. And it happens like in a flash, in like minutes. You just see this. And, it's like some sort of synapse has clicked in your brain, and like a flash, it goes like that. Then you sit back and you say, well, I know what I have to do for the next year. I never have a sense of how the story is going to proceed. I never do. I mean, for me, it always begins with characters, and the story forms around the characters and how they interact. I never have a sense of, the story is going to be like this, and I have these characters, and I'm going to move them there, The way I work, it's really, the characters sort of, in some sense, find their own way. I've never been prudish in my books. I think if you look back over my work, you'll certainly see that. It's so interesting, when you have language and you're confronted with the possibility, when you're confronted with, say, the possibility of what can be repressed, the very exciting thing about the power of language is that you can always find a way around it. You know, I challenge anyone to find any single bit of this that could even conceivably be censored. It cannot, because it's language, and language flows around you.
One of the things I wanted to convey when I started writing the Ibis trilogy was an aspect of Indian life in which stories and shared histories and memories connect generations over periods of decades and centuries. That's been the texture of my life.
I love Chinese food. This is Cantonese, and I love Cantonese food. I think Cantonese food is wonderful. But again, my particular favorites, I would say, are Sichuan and Yunnan cooking. I love the food of Yunnan. I actually think Yunnan, the cuisine of Yunnan is just unmatched. You know, I would say that my interest in food is not just in terms of the taste, but also, you know, I'm concerned with how food is produced, you know, and how food is consumed and the reasons for which food is consumed, you know. So that, to some significant degree, does guide my culinary interests. I now grow a lot of things, and that's something I love to do. I think I like to say that I grow some of the best black pepper that you can ever find. I take great pride in the black pepper that I grow in Goa.
So how much time do you spend in Goa?
I'm there for about half the year now. I know this may sound strange, but my house in Brooklyn and my house in Goa are strangely similar. You know, they both have very high ceilings. They're old houses. I mean, I go from one study to another study, and I have the same objects in both studies. I have the same. I have the same. I carry my computer, but I have the same screens. I have the same sorts of paper. I have, you know, so I've been very careful to minimize as it were, the disruption.
The city was then, as it is now, a place of extreme contrasts. Some wealthy merchants built houses so opulent that Calcutta was known as the city of palaces in the 19th century.
I still do live in Bengal in a sense. I have my family house there. I visit there all the time. My mother's there, my sister's there. So I see them all the time. I have a very active connection, you know, with Kolkata. I'm there all the time. As you grow older, I think cities become harder and harder. So, for example, I mean, just the air of Calcutta I find increasingly difficult to cope with. But even more than that, you know, our house in Calcutta used to be in a fairly quiet area. But now that area has become intensely built up. And just the level of noise is such that it's impossible for me to work. I need a quiet environment. I can't work in a noisy environment. It's impossible for me. I mean, if I hear when I'm really in my work, you know, if I hear a loud sound somewhere close by, you know, it'll just completely wreck my concentration. And Kolkata has become, in that sense, just incredibly noisy. There's the sound of traffic, there's the sound of music playing at traffic stops. I mean, it's the level of noise is really inconceivable. You know, even when you're not writing, even on the fallow days, you're preparing, you know. It's not like you're not doing anything. You know, the way I do it is that my first drafts are on a sketch pad with a pencil. That's how I do my first couple of drafts, you know. Then I move to to a writing pad and a fountain pen. And in the process of moving from the sketch pad to the to the paper, it changes. The sentences begin to take shape. Then when I move from paper to the computer screen, again the sentences take a different kind of shape. For me, all these processes are essential. All these processes are very intimately connected with each other, and I find, the visual appearance of a paragraph makes a huge difference. So when I see it on paper, it looks different from when I see it, on a computer screen. But I need to get both those looks at it. Perfection is more than I or any writer can aspire to, I think. I think poets can aspire to perfection, but for novelists, I think perfection is not something within the realm of possibility. The life of a writer is in many ways very schizophrenic, for years and years I hardly see anyone apart from my family. And I like that, I think that sort of seclusion is necessary, to writing books of the sort that I write, which are demanding, which require long periods of concentration. And I actually really enjoy my solitude, so those fallow moments are also moments of preparation. Just as a fallow field is also regenerating, those are moments of preparation. I often compare it to Hindustani music, it's the tayyari has to be there, it's a tayyari. So every day you're doing the tayyari, and then suddenly one day, when it happens, you're ready. I love music. Music is very, very important to me. And I think, because, in many ways, the forms of Hindustani classical music have really created for me a sense also of structure, With these three books, one is the Alap, one is the Vilambit, and one is the Jor and the Gat, So, yes, in a sense, you can see that, that sense of rhythm where you're talking about it, hurtling forward. Certainly, it profoundly influences my way of thinking. At the end of the day, I'm a novelist. Fiction is the water, is the air I breathe. It's the only thing that I can do, really. It's my, it's the only thing in the world that I really love to do. So it's more than just a liking or a passion. It's really my way of life now. It's just I get up in the morning. There are these words in my head. It's a question of getting them onto the piece of paper.
The building in which the East India Company usually held its opium auctions was probably at this location.
You enjoying the meal?
Oh, very much. Yes, it's delicious. It's delicious.
You enjoy the glutinous rice?
Very much. It's excellent. I particularly like the shumai with the mushrooms. That was delicious. There's nothing more wonderful a writer can read than to know that they've carried the reader with them, Here you are.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.